or good morning to any friends or colleagues who may be calling from Europe today. My name's Joe Harrison. Here is the Vice Chairman of the Benelux Business Council of Abu Dhabi, and to wish you a very warm welcome on behalf of the Business Council and also our sort of co-organisers for today, the Embassy of the Netherlands. So a very warm welcome to the ADIPEC week, which started yesterday with a rather impressive opening and award ceremony, running through to Thursday. I suspect most of us would rather be all together in person as in previous years, but thank you for your interest, nevertheless, to join us here on this webinar today, and for the energy that you'll bring to the session. Thank you in advance also to our two main speakers. Following the ambassador's introduction, we'll go to Thomas Pols from Shell, who will talk about the importance of health in 2020. And then thereafter, we'll go to Roland Collen from the Embassy to talk about online economic diplomacy. So looking forward to plenty of questions from the room. Please, bring those questions to the table, help the speakers respond to your interest to make it more interesting for you. You can bring those questions in two ways. You can either drop them in the chat box as we go, I'll keep track of them, and then bring them up after each presentation. Or as the speaker finishes, please be ready just to step up and ask the question. That's great too. So I'll hand directly over to a man who needs very little introduction. His Excellency Lodi Embrechts, Ambassador to the UAE for the Kingdom of the Netherlands since 2019, after a journey which included the Northern Emirates via Baghdad, Kuala Lumpur, Seoul, and now here in Abu Dhabi. So, Ambassador, good afternoon, and thank you again for your time, for your energy, for your continued support of the Council, and looking forward very much to your words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Can you hear me properly?
Perfectly.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Great. Then we kick it off. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Remember ADIPEC 2019? We were all standing on a rooftop of a beautiful hotel, doing some networking with great atmosphere, good food, good location, many business colleagues and friends, etc. What a difference a year can make. Unbelievable. This year we meet online. Even ADIPEC is online, and I've noticed that they've discovered a new business model, which is not that cheap to be participant this year as well, I could see. We would have loved to have a big delegation from the Netherlands again this year, but no, not this year, perhaps again next year. You know, it's not just ADIPEC that feels the impact of the corona crisis. Also the oil and gas industry feels the impact. Demand for oil decreased, and this had a very serious impact on budgets of the countries in the region. GCC economies expect a 5% GDP contraction this year. 5%, that's a lot. And budget deficits ranging from 8 to 28%. This really shows the vulnerabilities of the economies of the countries in the region, and we hope countries will speed up their economic diversification. But whether COVID will prove to be an additional hurdle, less income, less spending, or an accelerator still remains to be seen. Now, as an embassy, we were also confronted with COVID, but yeah, we tried not to sit still, especially in the UAE. We tried to continue with all the plans we had in our business plan for this year. Some we had to put in the freezer, but definitely not our ambition to position and profile the Netherlands in this country. Yes, we had to adjust ourselves, and many activities we moved online. And we organized events like webinars, meetings between officials, Dutch and UAE officials online, businessmen online. There's a virtual trade delegation on the way. We organized recently a round table with our colleagues in Tel Aviv to discuss the business opportunities or threats because of the opening UAE-Israel. A lot of things are happening, but all in a different way. But definitely we are not sitting still. And like I said, our ambition is still out there. Hans recently talked you up to speed about the expo preparations, still on track. We're moving along step by step and hope to be present next year at the Big Bang as we expect it to be there this year. Also, we started this year a little bit of a different outreach. We tried to tell the story about the Netherlands to different target groups in the UAE society. This through online and offline events. In other words, to continue business as good as possible and to keep the momentum as good as possible. And we're very thankful that the BBC is constantly a very, very good partner for us and helps us in bringing the business community together like today. We also developed new tools, and my colleague Roland Kolle, will talk about the energy technology portal we set up. This is a tool to promote Dutch energy technology online, and I'm really happy that Roland decided to join us in Abu Dhabi. He's been active as a regional business developer now for some time. He was based in Qatar, but recently joined us in Abu Dhabi, and we look forward to his story and look forward to working with him to help the companies in an even better way. Now, yeah, we're online. Having said all this, nothing beats personal contacts. Nothing, and particularly in this part of the world. You have to meet people, you have to talk with people, you have to drink coffee with people, etc., etc. So I really, really hope that somehow in the near future we'll be able to handle the virus and return somehow, some way to what business life was like before. Let's see. It looks promising. There's now a medicine, a cure on the way, perhaps. We don't know yet. Until then, we have to stay healthy. And on that note, I believe Thomas Pols is going to talk today about industry guidance on COVID-19 pandemic management and worker welfare. And that is an extremely interesting topic. And Thomas, I very much look forward to your story as well. And in closing, I would like to thank the BBC for organizing these events. Organizations like the BBC are the glue that keep the business community together and are really an excellent platform for information sharing. Thank you so much for organizing this. Thank you so much for doing this with us today. Embassy, consulate, I introduce Roland. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you think we might be able to help you, advise you, guide you, or team up with you. We are there for you, and please know that you're always welcome in the embassy in Abu Dhabi or the consulate in Dubai. I was given a few minutes, so I hope I did the right thing, Joe, and I pass the mic back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introductory words. Okay, Thomas, please.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you, Your Excellency. Very kind words, good introduction. I think it sets us up for an interesting debate. Just checking, Joe, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Excellent. So what I'd like to talk to you about briefly in the next couple of minutes is how we look at risk, how we look at people, and how the reality around us and the events of the last year, steer us to address those challenges in various ways. And nothing makes a great presentation as much as the next slide, which tells you everything you need to know about our company and how not to speculate too much. First, let's take a step back, or take a step up, really. This is Alex Honnold. I'm not sure if anybody you've ever seen the documentary that's being advertised here. This is the movie Free Solo. You can find it on Netflix. And it follows this free climber, Alex, as he attempts to climb El Capitan, the giant granite monolith that you see in this image, without a rope. As soon as he climbs over 30 meters, he enters what is called death zone, that if you fall, if you slip, you die. And this mountain, this cliff is about 1 kilometer high. And he was the first person to climb it in 3 hours without a rope, without any security, unassisted. There was only a documentary crew filming him as he did it. At some points, the amount of rock that he touches is less than a couple of millimeters. Not much more contact than what you have when you hold your phone. But in that sense, he is holding his whole life on the same surface. Now, why is that relevant for us to understand how we behave? Like, why would you do that? I look at this picture and I already get dizzy. Like, I don't even would say that I have a fear of heights, but this makes no sense to me. Maybe I'm too rational, but it's a bad idea. So is he different? than us. And on the next slide, you can see some of the arguments why he is indeed different. You see 2 MRI scans, magnetic resonance imaging, a great way that we can see not just what the brain looks like, but also what are the functional parts. So you can follow the blood flow in the brain as you take a picture like this, and it shows you the relevant parts of the brain called lighting up that you're interested in. And you see the crosshairs here, and they focus on a very specific part. And it is the part of the brain called the amygdala, and it's where our fear lives, basically. It is the part that helps us make our primary responses to threats useful back in the Stone Age when a mammoth is about to crush you or you see an enemy. It triggers the body to fight, to run away, to cower in a corner. It's a very primal response. And the way that these 2 subjects, the right person is a control person. So this is also a free climber, experienced free climber. And the left one, the purple color one, that's Alex. And both of them are shown the same pictures of horrific things. Car crashes, images of war, things that for most of us would trigger a primal response in our fear center. We make an association with that. That is bad. We should be ready to do something about it, either fight it or run away from it. And interestingly, when you look at Alex's brain, he doesn't have anything happening in that part of his brain. And it gives us a slight hint why he is able not only physically to make a climb like he did, but also from a mental point of view, he has a physical advantage. He does not experience fear the way we would do, which helps him focus on an impossibly complex task without really being distracted by things. Now, what is relevant for us here is that we are also continuously being distracted by horrible things. And on the next slide, you can see a little bit of, well, I would say all our worlds, and in Shell particularly, we have 4 big macro trends around us. COVID very clearly influencing all of them. We see climate change, obviously, emerging policies being developed around that. We are trying to transition the company to have a stronger foot in new energies from wind, hydrogen, biofuels. And in the meantime, we're trying to do that with a company that tries to make money off the older fuels, like the upstream industry that we have in this region, where the prices are obviously very low. Now, these things are basically our versions of El Capitan. These things trigger our brains. We have to, from the C-suite to the front line, deal with these pressures. Our contractors will have to work with tighter margins because we need to compress cost. We need to think creatively about the opportunities and the threats of climate change, all while navigating the COVID pandemic. Now, what does this all have to do with industry policy? I'll get to that in the next slide. I'll show you a little bit more why this matters for our brains. Like all those challenges that you see, we want to solve with the frontal part of the brain. Well, the greenish area, the frontal lobe, that's where we do our complex thinking, right? And you see that amygdala there in the middle where we have our fear, and that's a tug of war between those parts of the brain. The 4 images that you saw are El Capitan is triggering our amygdala, but the solution to overcoming these challenges is on the frontal side. So what we do in our policies, what we try to do in the way that we talk to our individual employees, how we try to instruct our leaders, is to explain to them this dynamic. It comes up a lot in our leadership programs, in World Mental Health Day, but also in policies around worker welfare. It all links back to how we know the brain works. We have complex thinking that we need to do, which is challenged by primal emotions that live in the older part of the brain around the amygdala. In the next slide, you can see how we can optimize this balance, right? Because we need a little bit of challenge, a little bit of fear makes us tick faster, right? So we want to use the opportunity that the amygdala brings us because it energizes us. It makes us more focused. We are daring to take some risk because we have to. We know from studies that people that have no amygdala, they become kind of reckless, right? Why would you climb a mountain that's a kilometer high without a rope? it's not a really smart thing. So we don't want people to not feel fear. We want them to balance their fear with their complex thinking. Enough pressure to make them peak perform, not so much that they don't know what to do, fall back on a primal response. Now, how do you make that effective in policies? I'll show you both from the macro level, which is like the high level challenges that the company tries to address, and I'll talk a little bit around how we do that more from a frontline point of view, how a individual worker working in the desert in Abu Dhabi, for example, can still benefit from this type of thinking. So on the next slide, I'll start with the high level. Maybe Joe will have told you about this, but Shell has a long and proud history of making scenarios. We try to demystify the future a little bit for our networks, for our stakeholders, but also for ourselves. Thinking through all the possibilities that could lie ahead of us helps us do some complex thinking before we are really under the threat of fear. Right? We don't want to postpone the complex thinking until we have to make a decision, because then we run the risk of relying too much on that old part, the amygdala part of the brain. So when COVID struck, we had to revisit those scenarios. So here you see rethinking the 2020s. These are publicly available. If you go to the Shell website, you can find the scenarios without too much trouble. And here you see 3 ways we see the future with COVID developing. So depending on the priorities that governments set, that society sets for itself, are we emphasizing wealth first or security? Or are we going about health? It really will determine what the landscape will look like for a company like Shell and for all our companies and for our governments. How do we navigate that world? By making this more insightful, we can make complex challenges a little bit simpler, making us better prepared that when one of these, or maybe even a different scenario, becomes reality, we don't rely on our primal response to deal with them. To give you a little bit more an idea what that looks like, on the next slide, you see how these scenarios work. This is just one snapshot around the energy question, right? And you can see that for just the demand side of our business, if we have a world that is focused on security and is entrenching itself, is going to more inward looking with less trade, with less exchange of ideas, less travel, then the demand for energy will be lower, right? While if you have a more open world, which is about maximizing profit, but also a world that prioritizes health, you see more opportunities for growth. Right? So we have different lenses on different topics, CO2, GDP, from a wealth, a security of a health side. So this is something that our leadership tries to bring to the different businesses to help them play a landscape. When Joe in his day job tries to think together with the leadership here about business opportunities in Abu Dhabi and in Iraq, they have this as a little support mechanism. And in a way, although it doesn't say anything around neuroscience, it still uses that same logic. Like, how do we help your brain make complex decisions that trigger your fear normally under the best of circumstances? Now, it also works on a much smaller scale for individual workers, and I'll show you that on the next slide. A little bit of data, because we are an engineering company, and here you see 2 things. You see engagement index score on the bottom, and we see a ratio of incidents per million man hours. So we basically, safety is leading in everything that we do at Shell. We don't do it unless we do it safe. But still, we know reality, unfortunately, accidents still happen. And what we've learned over the years is that if we improve engagement, and I'll get to what engagement is in a bit more detail, when you see engagement go up, we see our accidents go down. We drive a safer performance when we have engaged people. And engaged means these are people that are tuned in. They like what they do. They're invested in the outcome of what they do. They're focused on their task. They take pride in what they do, but they also feel hopeful about their future. They feel enabled, empowered to do what you have to do. An engaged person is somebody who will see something that he or she doesn't like and thinks is a threat and will speak up A disengaged person who feels threatened might stay silent and not share the concern, right? And will not actually stop an accident from happening. And we see these time and time again. So another way we as a company try to enable the brain is to drive engagement. So a lot of our policies that you will see, and we're not the only company that does that, is to drive engagement amongst our staff, get them tuned in, get them to be part of the journey that we're on as a company, to then lead to better outcomes. And here is just mapping safety performance, but I could show you the same slide that shows the link between engagement and other business outcomes, including return, which is a very positive thing. Now, in a corporate office in The Hague, you can do your sessions, you can work with your frontline. In Pernis, in our large refinery in Rotterdam, you can still do this. When we come to the Middle East, where we work in joint ventures, where we work with government entities, where we work with partner companies that are really driving their business on margins, and they want to keep costs down as much as possible, they might not focus so much on engagement. So we have to take our partners sometimes on a journey to get this type of thinking onwards. And this is where the industry collaboration that you can see on the next slide becomes an instrumental part of our strategy. We and not just for for engagement, for everything. So let's start with the big problem of the day, COVID. Right? We see a lot of threats from COVID. We see that the way those threats impact our business, it's not just directly by disrupting supply chains, by limiting travel and other factors. Now, this is also because because people are uncertain, right? How well are our people still functioning with the uncertainty that COVID brings to their lives? Kids being homeschooled, uncertainty about jobs, fear for family members. Like, how do you get them to still work at their best with all these external threats? We know that their amygdala is being bombarded with impulses. Now, one way we want to make life a little bit easier is by having some consistent approaches. Nothing breeds uncertainty as much as that you see differences between positions. So for example, when it comes to COVID, one thing we do everywhere is testing, and we want to diagnose people with it. But if you work for one company that does it in a different way than another company that does it in a different way than a contractor, we end up in situations where people lose faith in our ability to tell them what the best thing is, which again drives uncertainty, which is not helping anyone. So what we did, instead of trying to come up with a shell policy and try to push that on the world, we worked with our colleagues in the other IOCs, the international oil companies, Exxon, BP, but also the smaller ones, and also our contractors. There's some drilling contractors in a committee in IOGP, an Association for Oil and Gas Producers. And together we came up with a position on testing. How do we use testing? How do we make sure that we use testing when it's appropriate, but also acknowledge that we shouldn't, with our purchasing power, take up tests that society would need for other people? Like, we want to make sure that we only take what is fair and what is needed. Right? And this guidance has been widely adopted across the region and really made a mindset shift for us in how we approach testing. In Opal, in Oman, uses this as well. We've applied the same collaborative approach to worker welfare. Right? Beyond COVID, we see that worker welfare is really the activities around making sure that those people that work for us, for our contractors and that live at the work site, right? People that come from South Asia, that go build our projects here, that you see at construction sites, their welfare, their well-being at the accommodation, if we can improve that, that helps us a lot. It helps us on COVID because it helps us manage the risk of exposure at these sites. I don't know if you noticed that a couple of months back, when Singapore went into its second wave, unexpectedly, they said, it was because they didn't get it under control in the accommodation villages for their low-skilled labor. That's where the outbreak was festering. And we've seen it in Dubai, we've seen it in Oman, we've seen it at numerous locations around the region, is that these cramped quarters is where this disease really makes its impact. So worker welfare started as an idea to really work on that engagement side to make sure that we enable people to be at their best. But it now turns out to also be a very good barrier for COVID management. Right? So this was a risk we weren't originally talking about, but now we see that's another argument why worker welfare is important. And for that ambition, Shell is not just working with IOGP, it also works with ADIPEC and the Building Responsibly collaboration between the large construction companies that we work with. And we've also made it part of our own management system. So moving forward, what I hope to see in the coming years in this region is that we get better outcomes at our work sites and that we're more resilient to events such as COVID, because we treat the people that work with us, that work for us, in a way that is just, in a way that respects their human rights, and that actually helps our business just as much as it helps them as individuals. So I try to make the picture a little bit broader than COVID, because COVID is really just one factor on top of everything else that was already being thrown at our industry. And I see a lot of parallels between how we try to overcome those challenges as well as the COVID challenges. But I do realize I spend a lot of my days now talking primarily around COVID, the practical side. So I'm also equally happy to take any questions very specific to COVID if that's your interest. But for now, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention, for the opportunity to speak to you. I hope it was insightful, some informative. And yeah, any questions, please shoot.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, so open to anyone who would like to jump up and wave their hands with an urgent question. Otherwise, Thomas, it seems to me that you talked about that optimum balance between stress and comfort. I'm guessing between those four stressors, perhaps you judge that it's a little out of balance at the moment for a lot of people. What do you think are other urgent actions that sort of business owners or managers can take, at this point in the pandemic to raise health, engagement, and performance?
Yeah, so no, that's an excellent question. Like, one of the key drivers of engagement and of resilience is hope, and it is about creating a perspective, right? Being clear about where this will end one way or the other. And we might not solve all the crises, but at the individual level, we need to start moving out of a crisis atmosphere, right? Where we have like 2 weekly meetings, daily meetings, dealing with the COVID crisis, and we try to re-emphasize this as a crisis. Like, it's a finite period of time, but a year and a half, 2 years for one crisis is a bit long. So people need to go to a new normal and need to make sure that other things in their lives, such as a leave, a holiday, a step back, are protected. We're going through a reorganization, announced big statements to the market, but there's, in fairness, for a lot of us, that will not become reality until March or later, once the big announcements have been made to the market. Then, like, people should really feel that they are free to take some leave, to take a step back, to not have every meeting be about COVID and crisis, to find some other projects that look beyond this crisis. How hard does it be? And compartmentalize it a little bit.
Yeah, great. I heard that in the ambassador's comments earlier as well, about saying, okay, so we can't do one way of working. No problem. We'll switch to something else and keep keep all those activities going. Okay. Yeah, and your comments to the stress for the frontline workers, that made a lot of sense to me based on what we see in the joint ventures and incidents of non-accidental death. It's difficult, really difficult year for a lot of people.
No, absolutely. I see a question, I think, on the chat.
Yes, from Thomas. Yep.
Talking about risk management, can we really be prepared to a crisis like COVID-19 and the impact it has had? Well, yes and no. I think if anything was very well predicted, albeit from the timing, it was the global pandemic. We've literally seen this dozens of times in history, and you will have not gone far back in the future, in the past, to see some good warnings. We had SARS, we had Ebola, we had H1N1. A lot of these were clear warning signs that this was going to happen one day. So could we have been better prepared for that? Yeah, I would think so. I think that the challenge is more what is unpredictable about this, I think, is the global response. I think what we missed, the disease in itself was not that strange. I think where the difficulty struck was that the initial response started a bit late to this, although we really could have gone through the manual and saw what was needed. And then an image was created that would be enough. And I think that's what's biting Europe, for example, at the moment, is that we were led to believe that, when we did all our lockdowns and entered the summer, the worst was behind us. And that was just patently not true. And I think that's a temptation to want to think, right? And it's also a little gimmick of the brain, is that we like that wishful thinking element. Denial is always a good way to manage with uncertainty as well. But yeah, I do think that all the facts were there. I don't think they were very mysterious. I think in fairness that Shell as a company with disruption has dealt fairly well with it. The macro environment, obviously, the cost cutting and the lack of revenue is impactful. But from a safety point of view, we've had a really good year. We've done better in many respects. I think our trading department, as you will have seen in the results, has done really well to deal with this challenge. So I think it has come together. Let me just pause there and read the next question.
Right. Yeah. So the question here is, does this really work in Iraq or Qatar? And I think you can talk to that, Thomas. Got direct experience in both of those.
No, it does work. I think there's plenty of evidence that it does work. I think what you need to do for these people is not just look at engagement at work. I think for us as a JV in Iraq, we need to also be cognizant of the fact that a lot of these people that work for us come from downtown Basra, where life is not easy, and where they've had a lot of other challenges. And I think part of a way to drive that engagement is by recognizing that and acknowledging that more actively and being engaged as a company, as a partner on those struggles, right? To not completely divorce the reality at work with the reality at home, right? So the way you explain and drive engagement is that, for example, a lot of things are out of control in life for an average Iraqi. Like they just have to deal with whatever is thrown at them. And then at work, we ask them, here's the Shell manual, please check every pipeline, like your life depends on it. Like that might not resonate very much, right? If you bring it that way. But if you start, it's like enabling people to see work as an opportunity to build something, to control something, to own something, you can actually tap into a level of engagement that is higher than it was. I'm not saying this is going to be the world's most engaged workforce. They live in a lingering war zone. But you can definitely make good strides, and then it starts to feed on itself.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We'll have to draw a curtain over the amygdala there, and switch over to Roland, who I suspect will hide the neuroscience aspects of his work a little more. But let's see. Roland, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for this opportunity to be with you. Last year, I attended the Business Council breakfast event during ADIPEC as a visitor, flying in from Doha, and now having moved to Abu Dhabi, I was looking forward to be here live. But really happy to meet you all in this session, and hopefully soon in person. Just a quick introduction of the regional business development before going into the Netherlands Energy Technology Platform. We have a regional business development team based in different countries, UAE, Oman, and Qatar, covering the GCC region, and we're part of the economic diplomacy network of the Dutch embassies in the region. Our purpose is to scout for new business opportunities in the region and present them to Dutch companies and knowledge institutes in the Netherlands. And specifically, we look for new projects in water, energy, and health. And for energy, we're actively exploring the potential for new technologies in particular also solar and hydrogen. We can move to the next slide, please. So just a quick overview of, this is in Dutch, unfortunately, of the services we provide with the regional business development team, and a picture of what we did during WETEX last week with our energy technology platform and Dutch pavilion. Next slide, please. So traditionally, we've been using trade missions, trade fairs, matchmaking events such as ADIPEC and WETEX for economic diplomacy efforts. But to help us finding the right technologies to match the needs in the countries where we work and presenting them, we started with a new initiative together with our colleagues in the Consulate of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil for the Netherlands Energy Technology Platform. And the idea actually started at ADIPEC last year, and the OTC in Brazil, where we saw this platform already in place. And we decided to start this pilot for Brazil and the GCC. So even before the start of COVID-19, we thought this was a good way to improve our economic diplomacy efforts. But now it turns out to be very useful for economic diplomacy outreach online. Next slide, please. So this is basically the outline of what I will tell about the energy technology platform. Next slide. So the platform is based on an existing platform of technology catalog, and it offers a B2B platform with a direct access from updated information on energy technologies that companies themselves upload. And there's a feedback system from users commenting on their experience with the technologies, and creates direct access for users to check, which technologies are out there and if they're useful to them. And it's like a, booking.com kind of LinkedIn variety of technology catalog, where we used to go out with, say, paper catalogs of energy associations. Next slide, please. So we started out with a pilot for Brazil and GCC, but there's been a lot of interest from other embassies and other countries. So we've been adding more countries to the network and promoting the use of the platform for different energy technologies. So we're now extending it to the priority countries for the Netherlands for energy relations. Next slide, please. It's a catalog that will offer different types of technologies for different subsectors. Companies can showcase their technologies globally. The energy technology platform for the Netherlands is connected to the global platform. The feedback from the users is really useful, and there's opportunities for direct matchmaking and economic diplomacy. We created also landing pages for the different countries that we include in the platform. Next slide, please. So for the Netherlands Energy Technology Platform, we offer the service to add the technologies for free. It's a unique page for the supplier to highlight their technologies. There's reviews from experts and users, track record. There is a possibility to connect to potential partners, which is for us really interesting because we are a matchmaking organization as an embassy. And a global outreach through the technology catalog.com. Next slide, please. The procedure to join is very simple. Just in a few steps, you upload your information. The company does some verification, which is good for us because as embassies, we're not expert on all the technologies. So there is like a technological verification mechanism that will filter, if the technologies are real and proven. And then it's just a matter of registering and updating the information, which is in the hands of the companies themselves. Next slide, please. So on the page for users, we have created different country landing pages that the embassies can use. So it's really meant also as an economic diplomacy outreach tool. You can check per technology where your interest lies. You can also see which technologies have already been used and proven in the region or in the country. And that is good because there is also a difference. For example, in Brazil, there's a lot of interest in biogas and wind energy, but for GCC, we promote more solar and other technologies. And traditional energy technologies are also included, but we strive to include more clean energy technologies as much as possible. Next slide, please. So we've had already a lot of companies join. Since the soft launch in July, the number of technologies has grown from around 60 to 100 and is still growing. We've received a lot of support from the energy associations like IRO, who is always normally present at ADIPEC, but chosen to skip it this year. And FME, the clean tech organization that participated in WATEX. And we're in the meantime testing and experimenting with the platform, improving it and putting it to use during digital trade fairs such as WATEX and ADIPEC, and looking to integrate it into digital trade missions. And we expect to have one next year. So we're really happy with this tool. We're promoting the use of it. We would like to invite Dutch companies to sign up to it. And all the embassies in the GCC and other countries that are joining, they're using it as an economic diplomacy tool to do outreach. And for example, here in the region, talk to energy companies and showcase what the Netherlands has to offer in terms of energy technology. That's what I wanted to share with you. I'm happy to answer any questions on the energy technology platform or the business development team. And yeah, ready to interact with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. Yeah, so open to anybody who'd like to jump in. Or again, use the chat box. If I may, Roland, how did you do this before? I guess before an internet platform technology like this existed, was it a case of sending paper catalogs around the world, or what did this replace?
Yes, correct. I mean, we used to have the paper catalogs from the energy associations, from IRO, from FME, and as soon as you get the catalogs, by mail, they're already outdated. So, and they were always fairly general. There's so much information you can share, and now the information on the platform is up to date always. It can change. New things will be added straight away. It's very good for us because we are a matchmaking organization and we work with companies from different sectors. We don't have the in-depth knowledge of all the sectors. This really helps us to connect the right type of technologies to the users.
Okay. So Laurent's asking how do customers find their way to the platform, and how many customers sort of particularly here are picking up on it, or what more needs to be done to accelerate the spread?
Yeah, we're promoting the platform in the countries where it's active. Ideally it would be also a global platform for the Netherlands energy technologies, but we're starting with these regions. So the embassies are promoting the use of it. We're doing it through the business associations. We present it to our relations and our clients, but it's online, so anyone is free to use it. And through events, launching events, we try to bring it to the attention of the authorities here, partners here, like ADNOC, like DIWA, like the people that we run into. But of course, the companies themselves can also promote it, and the business associations. Mm-hmm. But we developed it as an economic diplomacy tool for the embassies, and we're trying to connect to all the energy partners that we know in the countries where we work.
Right. Okay. Do you have any fantastic success stories to share already about successful matchmaking and a beautiful relationship?
There are some companies that have signed up. They were already interested in going into the region. There was one solar technology company that is looking to set up in the UAE. I think since about half a year they've been working on it. They're part of the platform. Through the platform itself, I have to check. I think there have been a couple of contacts, but it's still fairly new. So we're still in the monitoring phase of, okay, how can we also capture that data? And that's another opportunity that we see, is that the data that is generated through this platform of the contacts We can also link to our CRM system in the future if we would like. So there's a lot of opportunities to grow this platform and functionalities for economic diplomacy in the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Laurent, there sort of plans to
Follow-up
expand
question.
beyond energy. Yeah. So you mentioned
good
the
question.
three sectors.
Yes.
But
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would love that. We've been talking about this. This existing platform of a technology catalog was focused on energy. But we've been saying if this works well for the energy sector, we could definitely add other sectors to this platform. So we're thinking about this, but first we want to develop this for the energy sector fully. There have been also other similar initiatives. So we're looking at which one works best. And this one seems to be really taking off fast because it's a setup that exists, is business to business. And really companies seem to benefit from this platform directly.
Okay, fantastic. Last opportunity for any other questions to Roland on the catalog or the e-diplomacy efforts of the embassy at the moment. If not, then perhaps we can jump back to Thomas. We had another one, Thomas, there that we didn't quite get to, which was, you spoke about neuroscience and engagement from the point of view of a large company, but how about a small company? What elements would you try to pick out to address first?
Sure. So one of the strongest determinants of engagement is resilience, as you call it. So your ability to overcome adversity, right? Challenges, your ability to stay focused, stay hopeful in a positive outcome. That's something that you actually can build with your peers. It doesn't take a PhD to be able to do that. So what we actually do in most of the countries, because like in my role, I cover the Middle East and North Africa, and we have 4 people in my team who work at country levels. So my colleague in Oman, she has hundreds of people to take care of, and she's not going to build engagement in them individually. It has to come, neither is she going to do resilience. So what she's done is train about 20 of them, a 4-hour training module that she's run with them to help them really to ask a few questions, to guide a small session. But in the end, we all know what this is anyway. It actually comes quite naturally to most of us, and it's more the ability to have this conversation, and you structure those conversations. So we have a resilience modules. It's basically 14 sessions that you can run. You can do a couple of them, you can do all of them, and it's a structured discussion with a small team, the people that you work with, and you learn from each other. And that way you build a lot more resilience because you are more aware of that you're not alone, that there are people out there that can help you, and you facilitate those discussions. So that's one way we do it. So really peer-to-peer. The other way, and even like such a basic training module, those are commercially available. You can even find them on YouTube, to be honest. Like, it's really truly not rocket science. The other way is really the tone from the top. We're very fortunate that we have a leadership here in the UAE with Ali Al-Janabi, who's very personally and genuinely engaged with his people, and people feel that it resonates with people. And again, that's not something you have to do. It's something you want to create a space more than anything. Are people uncertain? Do they feel that they can reach out to you? And if they feel they have a listening ear, then people actually, they feel like there's a safety net, and it's much easier to do a core balancing act when you know that there's a safety net than when there isn't. Right? And so that tone from the top is really, really helpful in this. Recognizing that people make mistakes. A very big program now in Shell is really about not doing a lot of process. It's around just acknowledging that people make mistakes, and that the opportunity then is to learn from them. And that helps us speak up when something bad happens. There's some powerful examples of that. That's a culture you create. And again, that's something you can do without being an SME. So I hope we spoke a little bit with Philippe on the chat in parallel.
Right. Okay.
Wasn't sure we're going to have time for this, so but that would be the
okay.
longer
So that was
answer.
the other SME. I read the SME as a sort of small enterprise, but
right. Yeah. See, well, there goes my shell brain. We're subject matter experts in my world. Yeah.
But I think the answer addressed it admirably, Thomas. So thank you very much. Okay, unless anyone else would like to jump in with a different question or another observation around ADIPEC, I'll bring it to a close here. So just to say thank you very much to Thomas, thank you very much to Roland, and Lodi, thank you for joining us today as well. And Mario, thanks for sharing our sponsors on the screen there. You can see have a range of suppliers to cope with any need that you might have, whether it's a place to stay or something to drink or the ability to incorporate in Luxembourg. All of these are available across the sponsors of the Business Council. And so thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for your interest in the ADIPEC Week, and wishing you all the best with conversations and business developments that come around that. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.